Ah, the TeraFlex TJ Belly-Up, transforming that rock-grabbing hunk of sheet metal into a sleek, smooth, impenetrable barrier that provides over 2 inches of additional ground clearance in the process. The install starts by supporting the belly pan and removing the 6 frame to pan bolts and the 4 transmission mount nuts. With all the bolts removed, we need to support the trans so the belly pan can be removed. Now, Adam knows a great place to support the trans with his screw jack, but if you're unsure of where to support the trans, be sure to use a block of wood between the jack and the jacking surface, something that's large enough to spread the load and prevent any damage. Raise the trans support jack just enough to take a load off the belly pan. Lower the belly pan jack until it can be safely removed. With the belly pan on the floor, remove the 4 transmission bracket bolts and lift the bracket from its sponge-filled home. Reinstall the bracket onto the new belly-up skid plate in the same orientation as it was removed, using the provided carriage head bolts and nuts. Go ahead and tighten them up. Man, that looks good on there. Try not to get hurt, but lift the new skid plate up onto the jack and raise it up into place. Start the nuts on the 4 transmission mount bolts first. Then start the 6 belly pan frame bolts. Now you may need to encourage the belly pan into position to start the bolts. We just lifted the transmission and transfer case over 2 inches. That's the good news. Now the bad news is that we also increased our rear driveline angle just by lifting that transmission transfer case. More good news. TeraFlex included the solution to the problem. What we're going to do is we're going to lift the motor about 1/2 inch. When the motor lifts, the rear output on the transfer case will drop, bringing the drive shaft back into alignment. Let's start on the passenger side, and with a long extension, remove that inner motor mount nut. By using the force, you'll be able to access that upper motor mount bolt from the top. Yeah, that looks easier than it is. With the bolts removed from the motor mount on one side, lift the motor just high enough that the motor mount stud no longer extends through that frame bracket. Now again, Adam's jack fits nicely on that pan flange, but don't be afraid to use a block of wood to prevent pan damage. We need the hole in the bracket to be clear so we can enlarge the hole with a deburring tool to accept that new shoulder nut. Now here's a helpful hint. Don't try to make the hole in the bracket a perfect fit with that shoulder nut. Ream it out big enough to give yourself some room to start that nut easily. The motor mount spacer has a convenient slot cut in one end. The slot will make it possible to slide the spacer into place around that stud. With the spacer in place, lower the motor just enough to start the shoulder nut on the stud. Now with the nut started, drop the supplied motor mount bolt in from the top and get it started as well. Completely lower the motor and tighten both bolts. Now that shoulder nut is a little tough to get at. Either remove the motor mount bracket bolt that's in the way and tighten it with a socket, or just fight it with an open end wrench until you get a socket on it and do the final tighten. Move to the other side and repeat the process. Remove the bolts. Jack it up. Remount the hole. Slide in that lift spacer. Lower the motor. Start that shoulder nut. Drop the bolt in from the top and start it. With both the nut and the bolt started, lower the motor and final tighten. Now just a couple of things to watch for once you've got it all together. Make sure that the cooling fan clears the shroud. If it hits, just simply slot those shroud mounting holes with a little die grinder or deburring tool and lower the fan just enough to clear. One other thing, just check your transfer case linkage for proper alignment. If you've got a body lift, you should be in good shape. If you don't, you gotta get one. It really complements the belly up.